and people are bought, as is the case with the current president. And it's a fact that the man is bought. I mean,
why do you say that?
Well, very simple thing. Where are the CR17 statements? Show us. We want to see. What is it? What is there to hide? Your close relationship with capital, the mere fact that there is a GNU in the first place. Remember, it's a coalition of convenience to suit the agenda of white monopoly capital. I mean, the federal chairperson of the DA has stated so categorically that there is no such thing. But what's interesting again is that if you look at it, it's synonymous again with what happened when the ANC was, and I'll call it what it is, infiltrated by the new National Party. Because at that point in time, remember what happened is, I think, remember 1997, you had the National Party, and then 7 years later, and this with the new dispensation, with the new constitution, because the constitution was adopted in 1997, right?
96, yeah.
Yeah, 96 came into effect. Sure. 97, and then you then have 2004. The National Party, new National Party at the time, then says to its members, go and join the ANC, become members of the ANC, but keep your parliamentary role, keep your membership, and keep your council seats, but join the ANC.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is something that happened in 2004. The ANC allowed it. There was no need. They had a 2/3 majority. And at the time, the president was Mbeki. And then Mbeki then says, for a conciliatory, measure, he then appointed Martinus van Schalkwyk, who was the leader at the time.
Yeah.
To form, I think at the time it was environmental affairs or something like that. It became then tourism later. But my question is why? Why do that? Right? Coming off the back of a so-called GNU that was negotiated by who? The same person who's the president today, 30 years later. Now, this time around, and remember, part of the reason why that was done, I mean, these are people that you used to call your enemies. These are people that you believed were not even human beings. But you now want to be a part of these same blacks, that you never recognized. Why? Why go through such desperate measures where you actually put your constituency at risk? And the same is happening now. Why would the DA find itself putting itself and its constituency at such risk by forming a GNU with the person they wanted to impeach a couple of months ago or a year ago as a president? It's because it's to protect interests of capital. It is to protect the control and the levers of the economy. And the reason they do that in the same way is, and that's why they said to Cyril at the time that you have to sugarcoat this thing when you take it back to your leaders, the NEC, and say it is a government of national unity. We're coming together. There is no government of national unity. Government of national unities are formed off the back of a crisis. Then we formed a government off the back of a crisis. Even then, we didn't need to have them. Now he's bringing back, and I'm sorry to say, there are many black competent leaders that can be ministers. But he brings in, and there's many other political parties that could have formed part of the GNU as opposed to a political party that takes such a racist posture. But again, let's not forget, if you look at the elements of the same political party, the formation of that political party was represented by people that he negotiated with 30 years ago. So this relationship spans a long time, all right? And now again, this GNU is a perpetuation of exactly what has happened 30 years ago. Why create a formation or step down and say, you know what, I'm stepping down. I'm a billionaire. I've done it. I've been a president. What more do you want? All right. And allow a formation between MK, the ANC and the EFF, for instance, and other progressive parties
Can I
to then form a government. Why?
Yeah.
But we can't form a government with an individual who's a sellout, who's bought, whom you can see yourself. And that's why we kept saying This is the ANC of Ramaphosa. We don't know this ANC. and then later on, with the formation of the GNU, people started realizing that, in actual fact, the MK were right. This is the ANC of Ramaphosa. It's not the ANC that we know. As you can see, it's imploding.
Can I ask you on that? Because when the negotiations happened, as I said, a lot of people thought the MK and the ANC might find each other and create a government where transformation would not be, on the table for being sacrificed as a policy, where, land, free education, etc., could be pushed through. And then the ANC takes this GNU posture and they turn around and they criticize you and say, we tried to talk to MKP, we tried to talk to the EFF, and they made unreasonable demands. What do you say to that criticism?
How can, firstly, free education be an unreasonable demand when it was implemented before President Zuma left? How can that be? How can we saying we want to nationalize our resources and take control of our resources be a demand that's outlandish?
So that's what you put on the table in those.
They know. We know that's what we say. How can we say we want to nationalize a reserve bank that's majority owned by foreigners? Be outlandish. Why is it not realistic? And on top of that, how can we saying keep your president as your president of the party, but we're not going to take our electorate vote, our organic vote of people that voted for us that want to see change, and then give it to a man who's more aligned to neo-colonial, neoliberal policies. And I say this because the ANC has not been able to deliver or implement any of its policies to date.
So your condition was that Ramaphosa stay president of the ANC,
yes,
but not the country.
I'll tell you a story, something interesting. So what happened is this is an interview that transpired with someone that sat here. I think JJ came. We did it. I think he touched on it.
He did. Yeah, that interview that wasn't aired on ENCA.
Yes, that one. Now, that interview, there's a lot of things that were said there by the president that have never really been disclosed or seen the light of day. But one of those I'll get to because we're talking about Ramaphosa now.
Yeah,
is that he then JJ asked him, but why did you choose Ramaphosa then as a deputy? And I think that's the question that everyone asked. But you chose him, right?
Yeah, which is true.
And he said, no, let me give you a story behind it so you understand what transpired. I requested, and this is President Zuma now speaking, about 5 comrades to go and identify a suitable candidate that would be a deputy president. And take into consideration the dynamics and the ethnic dynamics within the party that, is more Nguni related leadership, so we needed to bring in someone that was not either Zulu, Xhosa, so who could we need to identify someone. And I then sent, this is him now, saying these comrades to go and identify whom they believed was the rightful person to take on the role of deputy president. And President Zuma then goes on to say that, these guys came back. These are comrades that are known, by the way, sitting in the NEC. And these comrades came back and they said, we've got Ramaphosa. And he then said, okay, I hear you on Ramaphosa, but indulge me a little bit here. I want you to go and spend a bit more time looking. Now, that is in of itself telling, all right? That you've given a responsibility to these 5 comrades come up with someone, and by virtue of you saying you want another option, that tells you, that's very telling in of itself, right? And they said, okay, President, we'll also go and see if we can't get another option. He says, yeah, get me another option. And a person that understands President Zuma, once he says, yeah, no, just give me another option. you know what he's basically saying. Says, They came back, all right? And they saw the president. They said, okay, comrades, did you bring me the second option? And the second option, they said, no, we've looked, President, it's still Comrade Ramaphosa. Now, the sad thing about it is that he then said, okay, look, he found himself in a situation where he's given a task to comrades. He's entrusted them with this. They believe that this is the right candidate. But then he then goes on to say to them, okay, have you spoken to this comrade? And they said, yes, we've spoken to him. Is he willing and open to take on the role? And they said, no, President, he is willing to take on the role, obviously with your blessing. He says, okay, I'll give him my blessing and I'll appoint him as a deputy president. However, on two conditions. The first condition is that he serves as a deputy president for one term. The second condition is that he doesn't contest for presidency. It's because President Zuma knew certain things that the comrades were not aware of, they didn't know, which you are now seeing at play. Okay? And that in of itself then confirms why we then, and President will also take the stance to say, I cannot engage with a person, a comrade who's not principled, and a comrade, quite honestly, who is compromised. Because he has compromised this party if you look at what has transpired to date. The ANC is compromised big time. And he's the biggest liability, and they know that. Right? Because he could see strategically that this man being a leader here and being a president of this country, and with his alliance to white monopoly capital, as you're seeing now with the GNU and the GNU driving an agenda with the DA, making them really, water down their morals to ensure that they get into bed with the DA, with the ANC, is telling in of itself, right? That he knew the kind of person that you'd be bringing into this role as a president. We can't afford to have a person like that because he's going to be selling the organic vote and is going to actually kill this party. And that's exactly what has happened.
One thing that took me by surprise after the election and the GNU came together is on the campaign trail, we saw big unity between the EFF and MK. And then, of course, we had the moment where Floyd Shivambu left the EFF, came on this platform and explained why. And it's been something of a war of words ever since. Maybe not so much in Parliament, but definitely in public. How's MK Party thinking this through? This acrimonious situation between the EFF and MK.
With the formation of MK, and I think this is one of the ways that the president actually, he was asked this question, and I listened and I wanted to hear how he was going to respond. And they asked him, Mr. President, the leader of the Progressive Party in question, has obviously got an issue with you bringing one of their own, and in effect poaching one of their own, and forming a political party. And the President Zuma then said, but when I was the leader of the former liberation movement, the ANC, that leader also went and formed his own party. So no one stopped him from forming his own party. So why is it wrong? Why is it wrong when I formed a party and other people want to join me? So that was the first response. But naturally, it has brought some tension. There's no doubt about that. But
did you expect the amount of animosity that came after the Floyd thing?
The amount of animosity and backlash, in politics, what I've come to learn is that there's more than what meets the eye. So when you call MK enemy number one, are you actually saying MK? Are you saying us? Are you saying the same MK leading up to the elections that you campaigned with, that you worked with? Or are you referring to individuals, who happen to play a leadership role? But the problem again is that, it creates a very dangerous narrative, because if we're going to be talking about uniting as black parties and uniting black people,
Sure.
we, in as much as it is not the kind of scenario or outcome they would have wanted or we would have wanted that would have led to this, we need to focus on how do we advance the agenda of taking power, because that's what we need to be doing, and emancipating and liberating our people. So that's why at one point when they said MK is enemy number one, and I was asked, well, what's your take on that? I said, yes, MK is enemy number one against the GNU. Because, we're not fighting, and we will never, in any way fight with progressive parties when our agenda and our aim is to unite the same progressive parties into taking power. And we're focusing on the path to power. It's about how do we take power. But we're not going to be taking power if there's going to be skirmishes and fighting amongst ourselves. And there's ways, I believe, to deal with those kind of things, because they become counterproductive. Before you know it, we as political parties and the leaders are going to be used as catalysts now by even our own supporters.
Sure.
To fight each other, because we would have set a wrong precedence amongst ourselves. Instead of saying, well, we'll unite, but in terms of how we deal with issues, we deal with them politically and we deal with them internally. What we would have thought would have been a mature way of that separation and that move from that political party to MK suddenly turned